What would make this an especially meaningful conversation for you today?
So as you know, I'm taking the LSAT on Monday, so I'm not learning to learn any, big strategies or anything, but I guess just any final tips you have for tightening up those especially complex logic rule notations, like that example I sent you of if it is not the case that both are in, then two are out or something like that. And I worked through that a bit more, and now I'm understanding that a bit better, but just curveballs that are especially unexpected or uncommon, kind of how to handle those.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So a couple of things. I would suggest one, the game that you referenced from the Super Prep. It's an old game. It's an especially difficult game. I know that you've got it now. The thing you would do to improve on those is do several grouping in out games of that type. And I have a big list of games that are very similar to that one that I can send you that you might want to drill over the next day or two. And
Yeah.
with regard to curveball games, I have a big list of those as well. Now,
Okay.
I wouldn't say don't do all of them between now and Monday. That's way too much work. At this point, it's kind of all more about wrapping up. But if doing a couple of those would help you feel more comfortable, then I would recommend working on those.
Okay. Yeah.
So what's your plan between now and Monday? Because it's only a few days.
Right. Just I am doing the Khan Academy LSAT prep, and so they've been a lot of, they kind of optimize whatever your weakest areas are, and so for lately it's mainly just been redoing a bunch of games and passages and questions. So I've just been doing those sets, and then doing practice tests, and I've hit my goal score a couple times of 170, but I just want to be extra confident and sure going in. But
Sure.
yeah, I haven't gotten better than 170, so that makes me a little bit nervous if I'm hoping to hit that on
How
test.
many tests are you going to do before Monday? Maybe just one?
Probably one tomorrow and one Saturday or Sunday.
Okay. My
Yeah.
recommendation is to do only one more. If
Yeah.
aside from if you're not doing anything else today, I'd say either Friday or Saturday, but have that be it. Sunday, the day before, that's your day to rest so that you can walk in fresh on Monday.
Okay.
And you also want to review these exams too, right?
Yeah, of course.
So if you are scoring around a hypothetical, let's say 170, that
Mhm.
means you're getting about 10 questions wrong. But there's
Yeah.
also probably another 10 to 15 questions that you guessed on and got lucky or weren't 100% sure on, but it could have gone the other way. So it's worth reviewing those also.
Oh
So
yeah.
25 questions, if you're spending 10 minutes per question, that's already well over 3 hours,
Right.
maybe even 4 hours. So that's all, that'll take up all your remaining time aside from doing a little bit of extra games drilling like we talked about.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Have you worked through a lot of the exams in the 80s?
I don't so most of the exams I've been doing have been the ones that Khan Academy just gives you on your schedule. So I'm not sure when those are from. And then I had a bunch of books that I was working through before I started the Khan Academy stuff. And so yeah, I don't know exactly when these exams are from.
Okay, the Khan Academy ones are fairly recent, and I don't want to tell you to do anything differently in the last couple days that we have. Are you considering a potential retake down the line?
So I'm applying this season, so I don't know if timing would necessarily work out, especially for early action, early decision schools,
Sure.
in November. If yeah, if it doesn't work out, I guess I would technically have it in time for the January deadline. So that's potential. But
Okay. Yeah, if you do decide to retake, let me know because I can definitely give you some more tailored recommendations for that
yeah,
around using more recent exams. And also know that November is only 4 weeks away. And so if you're not totally confident you're going to get significantly into the 170s this Monday, November's only 4 weeks away. You could take that and still apply relatively early in the cycle.
yeah. I don't need to. I'm not aiming for a 175 or anything. It's just that 170 benchmark is
Yeah,
what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
I totally get you. So, what are your other plans in the next couple of days, or do you have any questions on what to do the day before or the day of, or test day preparation?
Yeah, generally, I don't, besides taking the SAT and ACT, I haven't taken any high stakes tests and yeah, since, well, that was years ago. So, I guess generally what you would recommend.
Sure. So like I said, Sunday, rest, take a hot bath, go to the park, binge watch Netflix, whatever you like to do to relax. But you could also prepare your test day Ziploc bag, right? So your admission ticket, your number 2 pencils, any test day snacks, any warm-up questions you could do right before you enter. So a favorite game, a favorite passage, a couple logical reasoning questions, just so that the first thing you're doing on test day is not the actual scored sections. There's
Yeah.
also any digital LSAT prep specifics you might want to work out. You said you've been doing Khan Academy. Have you also done the questions on LSAC's familiarization tool?
I haven't.
Okay, so take a look at that. It's at familiar.lsac.org. And that is, of course, the best sample or simulation of what the test day experience will be like. Because Khan doesn't do it perfectly, but LSAC's site does. So
Okay.
do you have a tablet?
I do.
Perfect. What kind?
iPad.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. So go on the iPad, go to that website, familiar.lsac.org, and just play around with it a little bit to get a sense of what the tools are like the highlighting, the underlining, the narrowing of your field of vision to only one question at a time, the countdown timer, things like that. This is a good opportunity to expose yourself to it now. Not like you're working through the questions for the content, but just to get a sense of what the flow is like, because it is a little bit different.
Yeah. So for so you said there's a highlighter for the reading passages, I'm assuming.
For the whole exam, you can highlight and underline. It's not incredibly responsive, so I wouldn't rely on it.
Okay.
You do get a booklet of scratch paper, so you could do all your work on the side. And that's really what I would focus on in terms of any kind of notations.
Right. And you don't it's all with your finger, right? So you'd be highlighting with your finger and underlining.
Yeah, they give you a stylus, but it's not that great. So I would use your finger instead. But even then, the highlighting and underlining doesn't work that well. So I would instead not even use those tools at all, although they're available to you. And I would instead just do any note taking on the side.
Okay. Yeah. I don't generally take notes or annotate on reading. Because I get through it pretty quickly. I usually have 7, 8, even 9 minutes left over after reading, so I can usually go over stuff. I don't know if it would be time better spent more taking notes and summarizing and stuff.
You might do a little bit of light note taking, but I find the students who do the best on reading comp tend to mark very little or not at all, because it takes time to write things down. It takes time to read them.
Yeah, I know. I think that's reading comp is where I have the smallest budget for I want to go minus 1 or 2 on that. And that's generally my strongest section. So
amazing. Yeah, that's great, because reading comp is the hardest to improve upon significantly. So if you're already good there, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's mostly logic games that was the focus of most of my studying. And then I obviously went through 1 or 2 big logical reasoning books. But
good. So yeah, just in these last couple of days, work on the grouping games, work on the curveball games a little bit. I'd say that's where you should focus your time for now, aside from doing one more full-length exam and reviewing that. But again, don't try to learn everything in the next few days, because that could run you the risk of burnout.
Right.
Instead, kind of take this as a time to wrap things up, tie up any loose ends, and then just walk in feeling good on Monday. But also knowing that if you were to retake in the future, you could do a lot more to work on games further. There are nearly 400 released games, and games actually is the most perfectible section. So if you're already close to perfect on reading comp and you could get perfect on games, you could end up with a really high score. And so I think that 170 plus is totally within your wheelhouse.
I hope so. Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get myself a budget of -5 on games, and then minus 3-ish each on each section of logical reasoning. And that's been within averaging across my practice tests, just more or less. Obviously I've been getting a lot of 169s, 167s, but that's what I'm trying to budget out.
Yeah, that puts you very close to a 170. So if you could just get a couple more points in games by drilling a bit, you can get that 170 solidly.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome, Ariel. What other questions do you have for me?
I guess when I'm reviewing my tests, what I've been doing is going through every single question, even the ones I got right, and just making sure that I but I guess when there's ones that I there's some that even after reviewing them, I'm I think in particular a section for me is for those logical reasoning, where it's an assumption of one of the answers is a sufficient and the other one's an assumption, and I a lot of times go back and forth between trying to wrap my mind exactly around why one is sufficient and why one is just a necessary, and those I think are also kind of a struggle section for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
for sure. They're very sneaky. They're very sneaky at putting tempting wrong answers that are the right answer to the wrong question.
Mhm.
So a lot of times for a necessary assumption question STEM, they will put a sufficient assumption answer choice because it contains the same phrases and it fits the argument very closely. But
Yeah.
it's stronger than what you need or what is required for the argument to work. So it's
Right.
all about perspective. Necessary assumptions, you're looking for something that the argument requires, but is more moderate than the argument. Sufficient assumption, you're looking for something that guarantees the argument. And so for that reason, it could actually be stronger or more broad than the argument itself.
Yeah. Okay. So like looking out for yeah, because like even I think there was one that I was doing like reviewing and I was like looking at both of them, like even when I like knew what the right answer was, it was still like kind of opaque to me, like because they both like seemed like they would guarantee it. So yeah, I guess just like a somewhat rule of thumb would be like if one is more broad, like it is probably the sufficient, and I want to go with a narrower one.
That's a good way to think about it. Here's what I would say. Necessary assumption questions are a very specific kind of must be true question. So
Mhm.
it's like an inference you can draw from the stimulus. And it might seem so moderate that it's not exciting and you might not want to pick it for that reason, but that's exactly what you need to pick. Sufficient assumption questions, you're looking for new information that, if true, would guarantee the argument
Yeah.
100%, leaving no ambiguity at all. So in general, yes, for necessary assumptions, gravitate towards more moderate language. For sufficient assumptions, extreme is okay.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like thinking of one particular one. Maybe I can email it to you afterwards and show you kind of like what I'm talking about. But yeah, those are generally the ones. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, like I feel like I have a pretty good sense of like the different flavors of logical reasoning I can get. Like nothing has really thrown me off in a while. But yeah, some of them are just the ones that are almost like mini logic games that have like a setup of logic and it's like match the reasoning or like what must be true because of it. Like I do diagram those sometimes, and is that like a good use of my time generally?
Totally fine. Yeah, those fall within the category of the few logical reasoning questions that are worth diagramming if they're formal logic, if they have lots of conditional statements, and if you have the same variables appearing in multiple clauses or multiple sentences, then yes, those are great candidates for diagramming. It's usually sufficient assumption, parallel reasoning, and must be true. Those are the cases where sometimes it will be worth diagramming. And so you'll do that on your scratch paper to the side
Mm-hmm.
as simply as possible.
And then I guess also with those, sometimes I struggle with like if a lot of times it'll be like that formal logic, but then it will also be like some or not all. And like, how do I incorporate that into my like diagrams and my like conditional logic notation? If it's just, do I just like write some above it
Yeah, you
or?
could. You could just write some above it. You certainly need to indicate that in some way. So
Mhm.
any full conditionals like all X's are Y's, of course, diagram those conditionally. But then for the some or not all or most, yeah, just write the phrase. Just write the phrase and take that conditional, quote unquote conditional with a grain of salt because it's not a true conditional. The true
Yeah.
conditionals are really what will guarantee inferences. The other ones
Mhm.
aren't as likely to. And so just I kind of keep those separate in a way.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. And also I guess so sometimes I'll find myself finishing like even like a logic game, which is I'm always the most pressed for time on. If I finish it with like 1 or 2 or even 3 minutes left, should I try to like use that time on like maybe like one specific question that I was not sure about, or should I try to like hit like as many as possible and get like a little bit more sure about each of them, or really try to like nail one down with that time?
That's a great question. So you've completed the section. You
Mm-hmm.
have 1 or 2 minutes remaining. If there was something in the game you just did that you're not 100% sure on, I would look at that. Alternatively, I would just put my head down and take a break, assuming that you're going to have another section immediately because the test is grueling. You only get one break in the middle after section 3. And so there aren't really any other break opportunities. And on digital, it is immediate, next, next, next. With the paper, there was like a
Right.
brief moment where the proctor says, put your pencils down, pick
Yeah.
your pencils up, continue. You don't get that on digital. So taking a break is actually a reasonable course of action.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to recommend going back to previous games because you would have to mentally re-enter them and reacquaint yourself with the rules. So I don't think that's a great use of your time relative to the other options.
So generally, if there's one in the game that I just did, going back over that, okay, or taking a break.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's good. Good to know.
Sure, Ariel. Anything else for today?
I guess I don't know if there's any final tips you have. My fingers crossed. I've been studying for a couple of months, and it's big.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you've done a lot of great work along the way. I know you've been in touch for a while over the past several months. I've got a big playlist on my YouTube channel of test day prep specifically, advice related to that, like what to bring, what not to bring. So I would suggest taking a look at that, and I'll send you the link to that playlist. You can check it out in case it answers any questions you might not have even thought to ask. But you've got a couple days to think about it, and that's a good light way to do something LSAT related without actually taxing yourself too heavily by working on problems.
Yeah. Great. That sounds good.
Very well. It's been great to connect with you. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
I think most actionable, useful is what to do with those extra couple minutes if and when I have them. And generally also just how I should pace myself over these next 3 days and not to take 2 practice tests, which I'll definitely do.
Fantastic. All right. Well, again, I'm glad we connected. Please keep in touch and let me know how it goes for you on Monday.
Yeah, great. I will. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.